Here.
Councilmember Colleton,
Here.
Councilmember Jones, Councilmember Rawlings,
Yeah.
and Mayor Lauder.
Here. Okay, and now we have proclamations. I'm just so excited to do proclamations. I like to jump right into it. We have proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Month, and we have here, let's see, let me get to my notes. Kelly Doty from Youth for Change. You're right there, okay. I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation, and then you can come forward and I'll present it to you. Whereas child abuse and neglect continues to be a problem in the Paradise Ridge area, and whereas preventing child abuse and neglect is a task for all citizens, and whereas the town of Paradise continues to promote events, activities, and programs that strengthen families using protective factors, and whereas the 5 protective factors listed here have been proven to strengthen families and prevent child abuse and neglect: parental resilience, social connections, knowledge of parenting and child development, concrete support in times of need, social and emotional competence of children, and whereas knowledge of these factors makes it possible for communities to provide programs and resources to help strengthen families, and whereas effective programs succeed because of partnerships with Youth for Change, Butte Baby Steps, Boys and Girls Club, Paradise Parks and Recreation, Feather River Hospital, and other community-based organizations, schools, the faith community, law enforcement, and the business community, plus the new 211 phone service. Now therefore, I, Scott Lauder, Mayor of the Town of Paradise, hereby proclaim April 2014 as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness and Family Strengthening Month in the Town of Paradise. We commend the efforts of our community organizations to strengthen families, thereby reducing the incidence of child abuse and neglect in Paradise, and encourage all citizens to become aware of what they can do to strengthen their families, to share information and work together and prevent child abuse and neglect. Thank you. And you're welcome to step up to the podium.
Thank you for signing the proclamation and for having me. I work at the Family Resource Center, and we have a program called Strengthening Families, and we provide lots of services, including Tot Time, parent cafes. All of these activities are meant to strengthen families through providing concrete supports such as food, clothing, financial assistance, transportation if need be. The parent cafes are really to bring that socialization piece together, meet other parents, talk about parenting and the difficulties and the joys of being a parent. And so thank you for having me. And does anybody have any questions? No? Okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Kelly.
you.
Okay, and the next proclamation we have is for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we have Danielle Cerna from the Rape Crisis and Intervention and Prevention accepting the proclamation, so I will read it now. Whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month calls attention to the fact that 1 in 3 women in the world will be raped or beaten, and that sexual violence is widespread and impacts every community member of the Town of Paradise. And whereas rape crisis prevention and intervention statistics regarding who the perpetrators are confirm if you are 18 and older, 80 to 85% of the time, it is someone you know. If you are 17 and under, 95 to 97% of the time, it is someone you know. If you're a person with developmental disabilities, 99.9% of the time, it's someone you know. And whereas rape and sexual violence and sexual harassment impact our community, and statistics show 1 in 5 adult women and 1 in 71 adult men will be raped at some point in their lives. Whereas child abuse prevention must be a priority to confront the reality that 1 in 6 boys and 1 in 3 girls will experience some form of sexual violence before they reach the age of 18. And whereas young people experience heightened rates of sexual violence, and youth ages 12 to 17 were 2.5 times as likely to be victims of rape or other forms of sexual violence. And whereas we must work together to educate our community about preventing sexual violence, supporting survivors, and speaking out against harmful attitudes and actions. As with leadership and dedication, we can be successful in preventing sexual violence in the town of Paradise by increasing education, awareness, and community involvement. Whereas for the past 40 years, rape crisis intervention and prevention has led the way in the town of Paradise in addressing sexual violence by providing free 24-hour hotline services to victims and survivors and their significant others, responding to emergency calls, offering ongoing support and comfort to those impacted by sexual violence during medical exams, criminal proceedings, and empowering those impacted by sexual violence to chart their own course for healing. And whereas the town of Paradise strongly supports the efforts of national, state, and rape crisis intervention and prevention, and of every citizen to actively engage in public and private efforts to prevent sexual violence and to take appropriate action and support one another to create a safer environment for all. Now, therefore, I, Scott Lauder, Mayor of the Town of Paradise, commend rape crisis intervention and prevention advocates and communities across the country in playing an active role to prevent sexual violence. And along with the U.S. government and the state of California, I do hereby proclaim April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
I'd like to thank the Town of Paradise for signing this proclamation. Rape crisis intervention and prevention has been dedicated to helping the counties of Butte, Tehama, and Glenn help the survivors of sexual assault and molestation. We mainly offer a 24-hour crisis line, which can be reached at 530-342-RAPE. Anyone who has experienced something like rape or sexual assault, as well as anyone, if you know someone who has done that. We also talk to friends and family, so this affects everyone in our community. We also offer therapy and support services at our office. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for your service. Okay, next up is items deferred from previous meetings. So we have our monthly update on our downtown pedestrian Paradise Safety Project. And Alex.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. As mentioned before, we are providing our 4th monthly update on the Downtown Paradise Safety Project. This is a project that has a primary focus along Skyway between Pearson Road and Elliott Road. The project objective, number 1, is improve safety, and we can do that by applying 3 proven engineering treatments: enhancing our pedestrian crosswalks while coordinating the signals and implementing a road diet. And when we do those 3 things, we can achieve that ultimate safety goal of reducing collision severity and frequency in the town of Paradise. Because of the magnitude of this project, we've undertaken a large public outreach process with the updates and community group presentations, town hall appointments, calls, and emails. We've had substantial media coverage on this project, and we've also conducted 2 public workshops, one with a business focus workshop open to the public as well, and then the second a safety focus workshop. And that's really the focus of tonight's update, is the results of that workshop, which was held on March 20th. We presented a complete project history, and we had about 30 attendees. Their general concerns expressed during that meeting included increased congestion, issues with parallel parking, and their desire to only do the enhanced crosswalks and signal coordination without the road diet. We also distributed a attendee survey, as we did the same survey for our business workshop, and we received 24 responses. Taking a look at those responses, we asked, as a pedestrian, do you feel safe using the downtown corridor between Pearson and Elliott along Skyway? And it was split 50-50. We asked them to rank their current concerns on existing conditions in the downtown. And we see their concerns align exactly the same as our business workshop. High speeds, difficult pedestrian crossings, and general safety are the top three. As far as when they were asked if there was a need for change based on the existing conditions, the majority of the respondents responded yes. As far as rating their level of project support, we found that 10 people submitted that they did not support the project, while 7 provided some level of support for the project as well. So a couple of just notes on that workshop. We asked them also to suggest improvements or modifications to the project as it was presented. Again, they did not want the road diet. They asked for additional traffic signals, additional pedestrian signals to eliminate parallel parking and increase enforcement. As a process to combine the two results, we received 24 surveys from the business workshop and 24 surveys for this workshop. So we just thought it'd be interesting to analyze these results, and when asked about the need for change, it seems to be a common theme that what we have isn't working. And so the respondents were overwhelmingly yes, that change is needed. And then when we looked at the level of support for the project, it was a little more distributed to being supportive. However, through this process, we understand it's kind of a polarizing issue, whether they support or they're against the project. And so I've provided an outline of the positive feedback received. Again, change is needed, and that we've heard during the presentations that a conscientious decision to establish a downtown is needed. They've cited the Pearson Road success, and they know that safety is critical in the town of Paradise by reducing collision conflicts for pedestrians and motorists. As far as the negative feedback we've received, their main concerns from what I'm gathering are delays, congestion, left turns, the perception of solving one problem while creating another, and then the lane reduction is many people are most against that, just as a point of information. And tied into that is the signal queues, and we've provided models as engineering design has progressed over the last couple of months. And so rather than just stick to how the original design was, how can we improve that queue? And when I say queue, that is the line of cars waiting at a signal. We originally presented a alternative which has a line that backs up all the way to Black Olive for northbound Skyway in the PM peak hour. And so while that's doable, because we were comfortable knowing that the last car to that line would clear in one cycle, the public outreach process really encouraged us to look into this further. How can we improve that queue and make traffic flow better? Well, our options are limited, but we already know we are optimizing the signal timing at Pearson and Elliott, and we're coordinating the two signals as well. The third option is to optimize and coordinate the Skyway and Neal signal. How will that impact the flow through the downtown? It's about a mile apart, but it could have a big impact, and so we're investigating that further, and I'll have a quick update for you as well. And the last option is to design a downstream merge where you'd have two lanes northbound, and they eventually merge after the signal. And while we considered that, it was deemed unnecessary based on the fact that it's less consistent with our safety objective. When you have two lanes merging after a signal, that concern that was brought forward of people racing to the head of the line to cut over at the last second, well, when you have two northbound lanes, that would be an every cycle occurrence, and you'd have that merge conflict rather than having one right turn only and one through, and people can adjust and pick the lane that's right for them before it's the last minute. So more on the Skyway Neal coordination. Our existing two coordinated signal system include just Pearson and Elliott, but we are taking a look at our proposed three signal system. And so I have an updated model to show council and the audience about what this additional coordination would accomplish. And it's about a 3-minute video, and so I'll talk through it as much as I can. But the important part to know, we're looking currently at Skyway at Neal Road, and so during these afternoon peak periods, it would serve more as a meter on the amount of traffic flowing to Pearson Road. And what this allows us to do is really frame how the downtown will flow. Allow a certain number of cars or a certain volume to get through, and then the pressure on the Pearson signal is relieved with that optimized timing and coordinating during those peak hours. And so what you'll see as we're still watching the Neal signal is that when there's a line of traffic, it may turn red sooner than it does now, because if there's no traffic on Neal or Schmally today, it'll just sit green the whole time for Skyway. And so that lets a huge platoon go and overload the Pearson signal. So if we shift to the Pearson signal, rather than seeing a stack of cars back up to Black Olive Drive here, it's a much shorter line. The queue length is almost 200 to 300 feet less, and that's a trade for 60 feet additional at Neal. So the traffic has a much better consistent flow through the downtown, using this method to coordinate Neal and allow it to frame the downtown and the amount of traffic going through. So with this, as you can see, the queue here is just 8 cars deep, and then you get a bigger platoon, but then the green light's already going here in a second. And so this really seems like a more intelligent way of dividing two big issues, is one, the volume, and two, the lane reduction. And so it's not an additional delay, you're actually just splitting where your time is spent. Rather than spending a couple of more seconds at Pearson, that additional time is split between Pearson and Neal. And so it's just one part of the design that we're looking to improve on and move forward as we get closer to a final project alternative for council approval. As far as next steps, we've done the public outreach process, and we have a council meeting May 13th where staff will be bringing this forward again to council for formal consideration. If approved, we could advertise an award through the months of May and July and construct with the approximately 2-month contract and be complete in late September. With that, I will thank you for your time and open up to any questions.
Anybody in the audience have a question for Mr. Maddox, our engineer?
I have one card from Ward Habriel.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. We've looked at this before, and we've added a few things every time there's a presentation. I think we owe Mark a great deal of gratitude for the work that he's doing. It's pretty impressive. As to the latest issue, the engineering change regarding the timing of the signals, that's something we really don't have to wait to do. That's something that could have been done years ago, in fact, and maybe would have alleviated some of these problems we've experienced. I've also got a paper here that represents more signatures. A guy just called me a few minutes ago before I got here and said, hey, I walked around my neighborhood and in 10 minutes I had this many more signatures. Do you want me to keep going? I said, no, I'll take it with me now. So we've got an overwhelming response from people who have decided to actually put their name on paper and say, I don't like this idea. Besides that, we didn't identify the job titles of some of the people who had signed some of those pages that I had submitted before. There's a cop, a CHP, fire, VIPs, a doctor, a commuter, shoppers, business owners, and on and on. A really cross-sectional representative of our community saying this is not such a good idea. Funny thing is that in the Sacramento Bee, it quoted Jody Jones as saying, hey, we got so many complaints, we have to change this project in Sacramento. We're not going to close so many lanes. We're going to leave some of them open. I thought that was interesting. She's an expert. Too many complaints. That's why we don't do this kind of project. Good idea. I attended a meeting where both the new battalion chief with CAL FIRE spoke, and so did the representative from Butte County Office of Emergency Services. The battalion chief said, I wish they would have tried a trial run first before they decided to do this. I thought, that's pretty crucial. A good idea. Put up some cones for a few months and see how it works. It was a great idea from him, but he said he's not getting a good ear about that. The Butte County Office of Emergency Services representative said he has heard that Public Works is going to be responsible for directing traffic, putting up signs, cones, etc., if we ever have to have an evacuation from the ridge. That's crazy. The VIPs have done that kind of stuff for years. And as far as I know, besides Paul, there's 2 really good people in Public Works. They can't possibly do all that. I either think he was misinformed, misspoke, or whatever, but if that's his perception, we need to straighten out stuff like that. That's just not right, and frankly, it upsets me to hear that kind of a professional person say such a thing. I think we've reached the point where you've received an awful lot of feedback. Some of the things are simple to do. A trial run with some cones, yes. Change the signalization timing, yes. But before we spend $1 million of the people's money, not such a good idea. Thank you for your time.
That's the only card I have.
All right, I'll close, unless somebody else has a question, close that public portion. Any comment? Hey,
Yeah, I'm going to make a comment. In the fires of 2008, and it is not only the VIPs, it is the Public Works crew and the VIPs and everybody involved with the town that handles the evacuation and sets up the roadblocks. And I mean, for whatever you were saying, that it was only the VIPs that do that, it's not. They help out. Public Works, the trailers in the yard, all of the barricades, and they're the ones that do that and have that responsibility.
you'd need to come forward, state your name for the record, so that people can see you and hear you on TV. Okay.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
My name is Cheryl Larmore. I work over at A1 Check Cashing on Skyway. And I came in a little bit late, but I think you pretty well covered a lot of what I was thinking. And I had talked to Mark the other day in regard to when we had the evacuation in 2008. I live on Neal Road, and we were evacuated twice. And the first time we were evacuated, I was taking Pearson Road to go out through Pence to get out of town. From the time I turned onto Pearson Road from Skyway, it took me an hour and a half to get to Ace Hardware, at which time I called my husband, who was behind me driving his car, and I said, let's just pull over to Ace Hardware because we are going nowhere fast. That's when Pearson Road had 2 lanes going each way. So I have that same fear in regard to any kind of an emergency, that if you put 1 lane each way on Skyway, and that is the main vein of this town, just how long, and I understand that there's been studies done and such, but it was like I was telling Mark, when people are panicking and trying to get out to save their lives, there's not always the organization that you would hope for or plan for. So all of the planning doesn't mean a whole lot, and organizing it to where perhaps, one side of the road goes first and they evacuate, and then the other side, is they're informed that they can now evacuate, is very unfair to me, in my opinion. It's like, how do you choose, okay, you get to go and save your life while this person can't? And I was also telling Mark, I'm from Southern California, where there's frequent earthquakes. And during those times, people are not thinking, oh, let me wait, they're trying to go. The other concern I have is throughout this recession time, it has been a struggle to keep our businesses. And as you go down Skyway and Clark and Pearson, you will see that so many places have closed down. The thought that I have is not only would it inhibit my business to have road construction, but to go to the 1 lane, I don't think it's going to make that many more people stop, and see the business. And I don't think that is again, I agree with you. That is not a good idea to want the town to grow larger and make it smaller. It just doesn't compute to me. So that is a real concern of mine, is the businesses that are surviving and have been through a lot of trials during this past, 6-7 years. To tamper with that now, I don't think it would be a great idea. I also agree in regard to synchronize your stoplights. Go ahead and repair these roads so that, there is a better crosswalk system. Right now, there's so many that nobody even notices them anymore. So if you, do those things. And I agree also, take your time and experiment with this before you just jump into it and do it. So I thank you for your time.
Okay. All right, I'm going to close the public portion of this, and, okay. Come forward, state your name for the record.
My name's Mike Pollock, and I've had a lot to think of lately. And I've noticed all the meetings that you had right now on this project that you want to do. And I also noticed that when you did the project on the 3 other streets, you didn't have any meetings at all. A few people were told 10 days before you voted on it that there was going to be a meeting. If you don't like it, go to the council meeting. Okay, now, another question I had, and I brought it up before, was people coming through here, and when you have all these timed things, how about people want in the park in these areas? That'll completely stop the traffic on one lane each way. And I think that's not too good. Also, I've heard that there was a pedestrian safety meeting on September 4th. And at that meeting, I wasn't invited to it, but Ashley Early mentioned that the consensus is slowing down the traffic. And so far, I haven't seen any good reasons why you're not trying to slow the traffic, especially through Pearson to Neal. That's all I have to say.
Okay, now, anybody else? Okay. Comments from the council? Okay, next item on the agenda is our consent calendar. One roll call vote will be taken for all items placed on the consent calendar unless we need to have, do we have any cards? Madam Clerk?
No cards on the consent
No
calendar.
cards? Questions? Anybody in the public? Okay, so we are, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor Bullen, seconded by Councilman Rollins.
And the roll call vote, Vice Mayor Bullen,
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Councilmember Rawlings,
Aye.
and Mayor Lauder.
Aye. Okay, we have no public hearings tonight, so we'll move on to our item 6, which is public communication. This is time for members of the audience who've completed a request to address council card and given it to the clerk to present items that are not on the agenda. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes duration, and the town council is prohibited by state law from taking action on any items presented if it is not listed on the agenda. Do we have any cards?
Yes, I have 2 cards, and our first card is from Ward Habriel.
Thank you. Good evening again. You've heard me say this before. I love passing on compliments. And you guys are due one. Here's why. This thing here. I go to PID meetings, and they've been complaining for ad infinitum years that their meetings drag on too long. And somebody suggested, why don't you try what the council does and have the public fill out a card and limit their time to talk. They did. It worked. It's because it worked here. They got a good idea, and you get a compliment because this system works. Thank you.
Bird?
And my next card is from Ray Harrington.
Good evening. My name is Ray Harrington. I live at 6203 Posey Lane in beautiful Paradise, California. I'm here to talk about the 56th annual Gold Nugget Days celebration. That during this celebration, more money is raised for nonprofits in this town than any other weekend of the year, including the Chocolate Fest, this Gold Nugget Days, the 56th annual. The opening ceremonies are on Thursday, the 24th at 7 p.m. At this opening ceremonies, the Gold Nugget Queen is crowned, and she and her court will attend every action during the weekend. And this year, on Friday, February 25th, we have the Highlanders and Miners Ball. The Scottish Society and the Gold Nugget Museum have gone together to promote, to have a great evening for everybody. There will be, it's at the Veterans Hall at 6:30. There will be bagpipers and people dressed in Scottish gear and miner gear. The price is $25 in advance, $30 at the door, so get your tickets in advance. And on the 26th, Saturday the 26th, 12 noon, we have the Gold Nugget 56th Annual Gold Nugget Day Parade. Starts exactly at 12 noon, not 1 minute before or 1 minute after. We're always on time. And the announcer this year is one of you, Councilman Woody Coulton. He is the announcer. I thought Woody was Scottish, but
Irish.
then once the parade is over, you can go over to the museum, get the Tri-Tip Deep Pit Barbecue. The Apologetics will be playing for free, and the museum will be open, and there will be a country fair for the first time. And at 7 p.m. at the Paradise Performing Arts Center, the melodrama is back. It's the Dirty Deeds at the Depot. This is I watched the rehearsal last night and I was so impressed. I was rolling, and when I start rolling in the ground, it's sort of like an earthquake. But it's really great. That's going to be at 7 p.m. at Paradise Performing Arts Center, and on Sunday, 2 p.m. matinee. Get your tickets before they're all gone. And then on Sunday at 12 noon, Big Red and her Hoagies. Big Red has been doing this for about 18 years. This is her last year, so she's going to retire. And our Big Red is Thea Max, who I know well. Dorothy Clark will be the entertainment then. And remember the 2 p.m. matinee of Dirty Deeds at the Depot. And at 4 p.m. on Sunday is the drawing for the $300 nugget, gold nugget. How do you get a chance to win that gold nugget? You buy the Gold Nugget Days badges. They are all over town, and the Dogtown Nuggets all over town. So buy it, come and enjoy, and help support the Gold Nugget Museum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray.
And one more card
Okay.
from Michael Larmore.
Okay. Mike?
How you doing?
Good.
Michael Larmore here.
We can hear you.
Okay, fine. Well, anyways, I live on 3943 Nail Road, and I went down and got a permit to do an encroachment. And then the inspector did come out to me later. He called me up stating that I can't do it because it's a danger zone where I live on Nail Road and they do go fast. No problem. I said, okay, fine, you know. And so I talked to Mark and I explained everything to him. I go, all I want is some kind of road base where the encroachment's at because the dip's so bad. I put sandbags there while it was raining. My wife, she drives a Mustang, which is pretty low, and to get in and out onto the street, there's been some close calls the way the cars go back and forth. It's only an accident waiting to happen. It's a safety issue. It's pretty bad. And when she does come in to go into our property, it's so bad the dip's in it. It's like a gully. And she has to put her flashing lights on just to turn in. Cars are honking, swerving away from her. anyone's welcome to go over there and try to take their car and go in and out of our approach. All I'm asking for is to have some gravel or whatever to put down there, since I can't do it because I don't have a permit for it, which it was revoked. That's all I'm asking for.
And was this something recent? When did this,
I just got the encroachment permit week and a half ago,
okay, all right.
and I was going to start on it, but with all the rain coming and everything, I had to hold off on it. So when Matt came by, he told me it's been revoked. The attorney said it's just too dangerous out there. You have to have a licensed contractor. And I agreed, okay, fine, no problem at all. So what I'm asking for is just some sort of road base to go out there for we can get in and out of our property.
If I can just add a few things to this, thank you. Michael, the problem, I think the big problem with this one, and I just heard about it, I believe, yesterday, was that we did issue an encroachment permit in error. It requires a certain license, and that's a state law. We're not allowed to give encroachment permits unless unless they have a certain contractor's license to do that. So we did go out and explain the situation and apologized for, the error on our part. And then I think that's when Mr. Larimore asked if we could do some work there, and I haven't heard any more about that, and we'll check into that and go on. I can't obviously promise that we can do that, but we will look further into this situation. And he can have a licensed contractor, if they have the correct license, go in and do that. Of course, he'd have to pay for it, and he wanted to do it himself.
I can do it for a fraction of the cost.
Right.
And the thing is, everybody's out to save money, and I'm in construction, and the way things have been, you kind of watch your pennies and everything. And so
Sure. It's a state law, so we can't change that.
I understand
but,
that. But what I'm saying is, since it's not even my property, okay, all I'm asking for is just to put some kind of road base down right where the end of the street is, on the edge of it. It dips down. And, I mean, my neighbor 2 houses up, she has plywood going down just to get in and out of her property.
We'll further look into that. How's that?
I appreciate it.
I can do that. If you talk to me, if you contact my office tomorrow, we'll talk more about this. I'm the town manager, and you can come into my office. In fact, I was waiting for you to come in. Someone told me that you might come in and talk to me. I was hoping you would.
I came in, I talked to Mark, and he took my number down to give it to Paul Durr.
That's fine. I think that we can work this out
Okay,
together.
So-
And the council can't take any action on this tonight, but
Okay.
we'll work on that tomorrow, and then I'll report back to the council on the progress.
What are your hours tomorrow?
8 to 5,
Okay, I'll be in there at about 8:15.
8:15, great.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a meeting at 9 o'clock off-site, so if you can be prompt.
I'll be there at 8.
Okay, excellent.
Sound better?
Okay,
Right away.
thanks, Mike.
For listening to me.
Hopefully we can get that taken care of for
Me
you.
too. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else that didn't have an opportunity to fill out a card? Okay, then we will close the public communication portion and move on to council consideration. Item 7A, consider the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan.
This is something that comes up every year, and this year, Colette Curtis will be presenting to the council. Colette?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I am here tonight. Is that better? Thanks. I am here tonight to ask you to consider adopting the annual plan for the Community Development Block Grant for the 2014-2015 program year. This year we received $173,625. That is a 9% increase over what we received last year. The majority of those funds will go to our housing program for our first-time homebuyer and rehabilitation programs, while 15% is allocated for community groups who apply for funding as subrecipients. Our subrecipient selection committee met on March 12th. That committee consists of Councilwoman Jones, Councilman Rawlings, Manager Gill, and myself. and the committee recommended funding for 6 of the 8 applicants. Those funding recommendations are in detail in your packets, and you can please review those. And so tonight, I just ask that you consider adopting this annual plan with those recommendations. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions from the council of Ms. Curtis? Okay, this is open to the public at this point, so I'll open the public hearing. If anybody has a comment or question about the CDBG program, be happy to take none. I'll close the public portion, bring it back to the council for action or questions.
Recommend we accept the CDBG program as stated.
What's the ordinance number on that?
No ordinance
Oh, there's no
number.
ordinance
No.
number, okay.
7A.
It's just item 7A then.
7A.
Okay.
I second.
Motion by Rollins and seconded by Jones.
And the roll call vote. Vice Mayor Boland.
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Rawlings.
Aye.
Mayor Lauder.
Aye.
Appreciate the time you guys put into doing that. That's kind of fun, wasn't it?
Okay, item 7B, review the town manager's report relating to the interim urgency ordinance number 539, enacting a moratorium on the establishment of fences and gates or barriers within or across private access easements, and consider concurring with the town manager report prepared pursuant to section 4 of the ordinance 539, taking one of the following actions.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mayor and Council, as you remember, on March 19th, the Town Council adopted an ordinance relating to an interim urgency act that placed a moratorium on the establishment of fences, gates, or barriers within and across private road access easements. And a copy of that is attached in your packet. And basically, pursuant to that ordinance, the town manager is required to submit a report to the council. That's what I am doing at this point right now. This is also in your packet. So basically what happened is the town attorney and the community development director and we met, we reviewed how the establishment of these fences, gates, and structures within such easements might impact the delivery of emergency services, including police, fire, ambulance, and medical services actually to residents who use a private roadway access easement. The town of Paradise is a little unique in that we have several private roads and private access easements in town where there are many houses along a private road. So if a private road were blocked, access were blocked, that could affect a lot of people. What we also reviewed what other cities and counties have done, and those are in your packet. And with doing that, we have come up with 2 options for the council to consider tonight. And a copy of those are also in your packet. One of those, the first option, would be to regulate the establishment of the fences and barriers, including gates, in a private road access easement. And if you will look and see what we have done in both of these options, we have clarified the main problem that brought this item before the council and before the planning commission, and that was to add a determination or a definition of what fence means. So a fence could be any barrier or obstruction or gate, including gate, that would block a road access easement. So in the first option, we're saying that no fence or gate shall be installed within a private roadway easement unless all persons who have a legal right to that access submits in writing and agrees to that in writing. So that's a consent from everyone who has a legal access. The second option would be, again, to put the definition of what a fence or a gate means, and then eliminate any reference to that whatsoever, and make it a civil matter between any property owners. So if someone were to place a fence or a road or a fence or a gate or an obstruction across a private road access easement, then it would be incumbent upon the property owner that didn't like that to get an attorney, take that person to court, and stop this from happening. So there's two ways that it is done. You'll see that many counties do that, especially in rural areas. They just say it's a civil matter, we don't want to be involved. It's not a place where the town wants to be involved between, especially between neighbors that are fighting with each other, because we just get drugged down in the middle and they start calling each other. They call the police on each other, they call code enforcement on each other, they'll call the town, they'll do whatever they can to get back at the other person. It's a sticky wicket to be involved in. So one, it's a civil matter and we don't have anything to do with it. The other one, we just define what a road or, what a gate or a obstruction, a gate or a fence is, and we require the consent of all property owners affected.
Before I open up to the public.
One question. If it's put in writing, who holds that paperwork?
Well, the individuals who have the rights would have that paperwork. We're not going to propose to get involved in every easement that we have, but in order to install a fence, gate, or barrier across a private access easement, you would need to have an agreement between the people.
And they should have a copy of that.
Have to consent to it, and they would have it.
So it's not something on title or something that...
For instance, if someone installed a fence across a private easement, and one of the parties who had access through that private easement stated, I didn't consent to that, and that would be awful at that point. The other approach, option 2, is you're out of the business of dealing with private easements and whether or not someone has installed a fence, barrier, or gate across it, and up to a court action, which is fairly expensive and time-consuming.
Individuals.
Yes.
Okay, council can dialogue about this after we take some public comment. Do we have some cards? I'll open the public comment portion on this.
I have one card from Max Bartow.
And you're familiar with the time limit, Mr. Bartow?
You know what Henry Kissinger said about the time limit? In 60 seconds, Senator, I don't even get to a verb. I think you give me 3 minutes, don't you?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sure I can manage that.
You get 3 verbs.
3 verbs, that's right. Don't test me on that. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff. So the last time I addressed you on this issue, I had several hours of notice. This time I've had several weeks. I've reviewed extensively again my understanding of easement law and zoning law, and to the extent that I can encourage you to take any action, I would say that option 2 is the only one that keeps you in safe waters. To answer Vice Mayor Boland's most instant question, even if you pass this and all the members under such an ordinance were to consent, the only way that consent would have any legal enforceability to subsequent bona fide purchasers for value would be to record it against the property. They would need to do such a thing. And nothing prevents the town of Paradise from taking action to support the public safety, regardless of what private landowners make in terms of their access and usage of their easements. I want to remind the council that the interim emergency ordinance was enacted on the basis of potential safety and public access issues for fire and ambulance and so forth, but nowhere in either option are those actual issues actually addressed. Nowhere in those ordinances does it speak to those things. The only thing you see spoken to, especially in Ordinance 1, you see the mention of consent. And let me just remind you that consent amongst landowners is not going to solve your public health issues or public safety issues. If they all consent to put up an immovable 18-foot barrier, I doubt very highly that you're going to accommodate that, right? Finally, after reviewing the basis for the authority to do this, of course the council has the power to override the time-honored and tested law of easements in the state of California. The only way that they can reasonably do so, however, is with their police power under the zoning ordinances. I suggest to you that given the facts that give rise to this issue, the use of the police power in this instance amounts to the bazooka on the fly. It is a very, very severe remedy for a single set of facts, and I can encourage you only to do nothing or to take option 2. Thank you.
Other cards?
No other cards.
All right. Anybody else want to talk about fences or easements or gates? Okay. I will close the public comment portion and bring it back to council. Mr. Moore, do you want to address any of the...
Well, there's no question that you have the authority under zoning to regulate activities on private properties within the town of Paradise. Easement law is a totally separate type of law. We're not talking about interfering with easements at this point in time. What we're talking about is clarifying the zoning requirements if you want to install a gate or fence or a barrier across a private access easement. We tried to fashion the ordinance in a way that would not become burdensome on property owners, but would protect property owners if you wish to do so, and their rights, so that they are in charge of the easement down. But you can't just go out and block access to someone's property without their consent. And it's the other approach is to say, well, we don't want to get involved in this type of activity. Leave it to the private property with it in a court. Paradise is an unusual community because it has many private access ways that look just like public streets. There's no difference at all in them. I live on one, and I found out that it's a private street, and the town does not maintain that street. But it looks exactly like the other streets in the neighborhood. So there are many of these situations, and there are 7 or 8 homes that use that road. So when you look at that type of situation, you certainly wouldn't want to have people just putting gates up without the consent of the other property owners who have to use it. So we try to be reasonable. We don't want to get involved in other people's activities any more than we have to. Some situations it's either necessary to get somewhat involved or to say we're not going to get involved at all and have clarity in the law. You know, all laws should be clear. And when you have different opinions about what a word means, staff and your planning commission need to clarify it. You need to make certain that people know what those words mean. And the ordinance belongs to the council. You're the legislative body. You have the authority to interpret it, to clarify it. No one else can actually do that except for the town council.
Regarding this ordinance as proposed, what we've essentially done in this draft is we've added the definition and clarified that the neighbors have to, the other owners or users of that, entitled users of that easement have to agree.
That's option 1.
Well, with option 1. The option 2 is, there's really nothing there. So we've had this ordinance in place for, prior to this, without the definition, and it's worked because we haven't had a problem. I mean, I look at ordinances as being, some cases being preventative. If people come in and say, I'm going to put a gate across this road, and you can point to the ordinance, or a fence across my easement, and, well, it says here you can't do it, so they don't do it. And we don't know how many times that's been used in the history of the town since its incorporation or since that ordinance was put into place. So I presume that means that the ordinance was working.
But the ordinance was working as far as we know, because we weren't involved in any sort of litigation except for one case where someone did install a fence that encroached in private access way, and we added other things.
So,
Yeah.
Jody, you had a question. I'm sorry. Comment?
Comment that in looking through the staff report, it appeared to me that almost all of the other municipalities that were surveyed are out of this. That's kind of my inclination as well. I don't see that the town has had a huge problem with this, that it's a circumstance, and I think we ought to go with option B and just handle it as a civil matter.
Yes, I was going to go where you went as well. We've got an ordinance that's been working for years. This town's been in existence for 34, 35 years. And to my knowledge, of course I haven't been here that long, but has there ever been, in anybody's memory, where we've had this type of problem where two neighbors are arguing over the issue that we have on the table today? I don't think so.
We have had
We had that
Well,
one
that
that was
one, but
referred to.
that one was handled in the way this young man explained to us a while ago. But, so what I say is this, I think that we should leave the ordinance alone, keep it as is, and just stay out of it per option 2, which is, or go to option 2, because the option 2 has the definitions of the two entities that's involved in gate or fence. But I do believe that the town should stay out of what should be a civil matter and not attempt to regulate individuals who are having a disagreement. That's for the court to decide. But I see no problem with leaving our ordinance the way it is, because it's been working well, and I feel on this. And if we do go to option 2, I would have something to say about the two definitions. And so before we decide, I would like to speak again.
I guess I'm confused. If you have an ordinance that's confusing, why would we leave it? More like what you're saying is take the ordinance out completely? Get rid of the ordinance? Because if you want to just go to civil, then get rid of the whole ordinance and let it be freewheeling, or...
Isn't that what option 2 is?
Or you just...
No, we're not getting rid of the whole ordinance. We're just leaving that one part out about putting a gate across a private access easement. That's what's at issue here.
Why don't we clarify it? If there's a clouded issue here, let's clarify it. Let's make it to where it isn't clouded anymore, right?
The clouded issue was the definition of fence and gate, so we fixed that in both of our options for the council.
But going back to the ordinance, the original ordinance has been on books since the incorporation of the town. The whole point, the intent of the ordinance was that if you have easements, both public and private, which the ordinance addresses, so you can't just eliminate the ordinance, because it talks about on public lands as well. So in other words, I can't go build a fence or put boulders up in the public right-of-way, but it also covers private easements, and so I agree with you. There was this contention that's come up over the definition because the word fence was used back when it was written, and the whole idea was that you can't put a barrier in an easement, be it public or private. So that's where the whole thing came about. And so that's what it said. We either got to take and leave it. My concern with the civil matters are, and I've read I'm not a lawyer, but I've read when it was provided to me, I read the laws on easement, laws that were provided to me. And, so if I have this easement, I can pass through other people's property and I can make improvements to be able to do that, to get to my property. And that easement law, I don't need to get anybody's permission. If it's a deed easement, I have that. For me to build a security gate or something like that, a structure, you know, my pea brain, non-lawyer brain, says, and the courts would decide that. But the problem here is that we had a problem with a different situation where we had a house that was abandoned, a tree fell in, and the whole neighborhood, an out-of-town owner, and the whole neighborhood kept coming to this council complaining, do something about it, do something to do, and we couldn't. The law precluded us. We had no right to go on that property and clean it up. We didn't have the money to abate it and all that stuff. So the same thing is here. It's like, if I go start building something on your property, what Mr. Bartel was talking about, was like, if you put an 85-foot fence up, on an easement, my fire department or somebody's going to come in, or first responders are going to say, you're going to have to take that down, or you're going to have to give me a way to get through it. So yeah, we have some authority there, but I agree with you, Greg, like, if something is, and I've talked to people from the county and read those things where they don't be involved. My concern with that is it costs a lot of money to get a lawyer, takes a lot of time to go through the court process. If you start building something on my property, it's going to be like road rage, but way worse. I mean, I understand that, and we haven't had a problem with this before, but our ordinance isn't that clear. This came about because the person that wants to build within their easement, their deeded easement on another person's property, came to get a permit to build what they wanted to build. And then suddenly it's like, well, here's some concerns and here's some issues. So if we're going to have we have to have an ordinance that deals with public lands. We have to have that because we have to maintain that authority. And we have it, and it hasn't been a problem in all the years we've been in town. So, my propensity, and I don't want to get involved in civil matters, but if we clarify this ordinance where we define barriers, fences, to include all sorts of barriers, including gates, then there's some things, if disputes come up, there's something very clear saying, well, no, you can't do that unless everybody agrees to it. I would be as angry as other people are if somebody tried to build something on my...
So in the ordinance as it exists, there's guidelines for safety and for fire trucks, for ambulances to get through. Is that already built in?
It exists currently?
Currently, yes.
No, there's only one other provision that's in the fire code. It deals with a security gate, and there are requirements for how that has to be installed.
Right.
Otherwise, there's a provision in the zoning ordinance which states that no one shall install a fence within a public right-of-way or a private access way.
Right.
And the problem came up because the Planning Commission interpreted fence not to include a gate.
Got it. But you don't think we need to clarify the safety aspect of it? You think that's already in?
If you wish to do so, we were trying to keep it as simple as possible and not have a lot of specifications as to what would be necessary. If you did install a gate, fence, or barrier, that you'd have to comply with all of these different requirements.
Well, I know on a private piece of property we put a gate in, and I had to comply with that, so...
Yeah, isn't like the fire code, isn't there something...
Fire code.
Well, it's supposed to...
Fires that, you know what I mean? Like...
Okay, so I don't want to be redundant. If it's already there, that's why I'm asking.
We don't need to address the safety issue.
Correct, that's in the
There's
fire
state
code.
codes that handle that.
So it'd be redundant if we did
And,
something else.
Right, we'd be just open up a bucket of worms if we
And
stopped
again,
that
if you look
involvement.
at what the other cities are addressing, and even what the fence is, most of the fences are like perpendicular or blocked by cars. You can't park your car there because the road is small, maybe, and if you put a car there, then it blocks other people's passage or it obstructs it. So they're saying you can't partially block or block. What we're talking about here is a cross, right? Not perpendicular as we had on that one issue recently. This is a cross. You can't put a fence or a gate or something across to block that. And that seems obvious.
On pages 62 and 63, our city manager went through great lengths to do her homework and call several other governmental agencies throughout the country, one of them being from my home state, and majority of those cities and counties have decided to stay out of it and call it a civil matter, which that's where it belongs. I don't think that we need to get into a court fight. Our town, we need to just let that be a civil matter and stay out of it. And that's my say on that. And it's backed up by some of the research that our manager has done.
Actually, the Community Development Director put this together and did some of this research. And you may ask him any questions that you'd like. You can call him up. He is here in the audience today. I didn't put him on the side because we only have a few chairs over there. But again, there are two different scenarios. Some are more rural. Some of these are more rural in nature, right? And so it doesn't come up a lot. The town of Paradise is different in that we do have a lot of private roads with a lot of properties on them. And it's just a unique place. In either option, we're asking that the council consider clarifying the wording, obviously, because we want to include the word gate. If that's confusing, we certainly want to take this opportunity to fix that so we don't have that in the future. We're also taking the opportunity for the council to consider, leave it like it is, and fix the definition of gate or fence, or allow the affected property owners to go ahead and do that if they wish, or again, as Councilmember Rollins and Jones were stating, just stay out of it completely.
Well, when you come to the definitions of a fence, let me turn to the page here. On page 57, option 2, a fence means any barrier or structure consisting of any material. Then it's got including a gate. I suggest that we have a separate meaning for gate. In my opinion, a gate is an instrument attached to a fence that opens and closes to allow ingress and egress, and enters and exits. And when it's closed, there could be an argument that it becomes part of the fence, but it's designed for a specific purpose, not the same as a fence. So it does open and close and allows ingress and egress.
Okay, I live on a private road, Forest Service Road, and there's about 6 of us that live on that road. Cal Fire Station 30, 45, 35, whatever, is located at the end of the road. The 33. The 40, 50, okay. Anyway, there's a fire station at the end of the road, 35. And there's also the dog park that belongs to Paradise Parks and Recreation, and there's 2 ballparks that belong to Paradise Parks and Recreation. There are over 300 cars a night that go through there during baseball season, not counting the increased traffic in front of my house because of the dog park. There's also a PID water tank that has very little traffic. And the fire trucks, one fire truck, like a garbage truck, is the equivalent of about 6 or 8 cars traveling across that road. Now, it's a private road, and the 6 people that live on that road, we own it. So if we don't have this is a civil matter, and I put a gate up on my road tomorrow, then CAL FIRE is going to have to take me to court to get that gate taken down, and so is PRPD. I'm sure somebody will run through the gate. That isn't a problem, but I mean, I understand this like it's a civil matter, but you know what? We have an ordinance that has a purpose, and if we and again, going back to the intent, not playing with semantics of gates, fences, lollipops, and all that. The intent was you can't put a barrier on an easement, period, whether it's the town's easement or a private easement, and that language was inadequate, for 25 years, because now there's a situation. There may never be another situation. We're not getting into a personal fight. We simply got to either define it or eliminate it. I am not going to go for option 2, go for option 1.
The only thing I would add, and I agree with you, the only thing I add is it didn't say you can't put it, period. The town has allowed it if the parties agree.
Parties agree.
If the parties agree, this town hasn't stepped in and stopped them from doing it, which I think is good to have a government that doesn't step in and stop parties from doing something that they'll agree to.
Right, so if I wanted to put my gate up there with the ordinance, with the new language, I would simply have to get CAL FIRE, Parks and Rec, and PID, and the other 5 neighbors to agree to it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
Okay, so what if one of those neighbors sells his house, he moves out, you get somebody else comes in, don't want to agree, then you got the same argument.
When you buy property, you buy it with whatever
Then
is
it's
there.
Whatever covenants and
Okay.
restrictions are in place.
I understand, okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, Mr. Colleton or Mr. Bullen or Mr. Rollins, Ms. Jones, somebody going to make a motion? Or are we going to?
Motion that we adopt option 2 with the added meaning what a gate is.
Correct. Just number 2, because it has that in
Option
there.
2.
Right.
I'm making a motion that we accept option 2.
Have a second. Motion's going to die for a lack of a second, unless you want to.
Are you motioning option 2 as the staff recommends it?
Yes.
With no
As
additions?
recommended, only with the change in what definition of a gate is. I don't-
Which is what it is. In other words, option 2, yes, Jody. Which I think is what you said you were for.
But before, Councilmember Rollins said he wanted to add a sentence in there. So
Are
I'm
you
trying to
saying
clarify
add
if
the
he's adding a
sentence?
sentence or not.
Good, that's a good point. So, Councilmember Rawlings, number 2, as it is written and as it is proposed this evening, does make that a distinction between gate and fence, just like you asked, I believe,
But
right?
I think he's saying he disagrees with
Get it.
what's proposed.
Okay.
And you wanted an additional you wanted
Okay.
gate broken out separately?
My apologies.
Well, look,
I get it.
if this will make it any simpler, I mean, really, I believe that a gate should be defined as a gate and not as a fence, all right? But if it's going to hold up this process, option 2 is the way to go, in my opinion.
Right now, for the public that's not reading this, the fence means any barrier or structure consisting of any material, including a gate. So,
Option 2 means direct planning,
well, I'm just talking about, I'm only
about the
talking about the
definition.
definition of the word.
So if the motion,
Option 2
if the
has no-
motion is the staff, as the staff has put together option 2, I'll second it.
All right, we'll just make it that way, and I'm fine with that.
And all it lacks is the consent of the neighbors from
No,
option 1.
No.
it doesn't
No,
regulate it at all.
Doesn't regulate it
makes
at all.
No regulation, it wipes it out.
Wipes it out.
So all, any,
For instance,
eliminates public.
if
private
someone installed a fence, gate, or barrier across a private access easement, and they called the town, we would tell them, we do not regulate those types of activities.
Okay.
Basically, they're on their own. They would have to
That's the
get
way
a
it's
lawyer and take
drafted.
them to court.
It's unregulated.
All right, so that clarified sufficiently? We have a roll call?
Okay, the roll call on option 2 as recommended by staff. Vice Mayor Boland?
No.
Councilmember Culleton?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Rawlings?
Yes.
Mayor Lauder?
No. Sorry. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to, obviously that leaves us with, generally with option 1
I'll
unless we
entertain a
want
motion for option 1 recommended by staff to definition of fence to include all of those definitions we parties must agree to it.
the ordinance number is
540.
540. Okay, I have a motion. Do we have a second on that? A motion and second, roll call. Certainly.
Thank you. I prefer option 2, but I do believe that we need to do something. I don't think that the status quo is where we want to leave it, and so I'm going to go ahead and vote yes on this.
Want to make any comment? Rawlings? Oh, okay. Okay, roll call.
Okay,
please,
on the
Madam
roll
Clerk.
call on option 1, ordinance, which will be ordinance 540 as presented. Vice Mayor Boland?
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Rawlings?
No.
And Mayor Lauter.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Now, do we need to extend the moratorium?
But that'll have to come back to the council because it's not on for action this evening. So
Because that expires,
a moratorium expires May 2nd. Requires...
special meeting?
It will require a special meeting because it requires a public... You also need to concur with the town manager's report, just as a formality. Do we have a motion concurring with the town manager's report? That's number one.
We have a motion by Mr. Culleton, second by Mr. Rollins.
And this is to concur with the
Concur with the town manager's report
as
regarding it.
presented.
Yes.
And just so everyone knows, this recommendation will go back to the Planning Commission, and they will make this recommendation, they will consider this, have this discussion, make this recommendation back to the town council, probably at their June meeting. Yes. It will probably go to the Planning Commission at the regular meeting in May. Right? Because we do have to notice it, and it will go to the Planning Commission in May, come back to the council in June, and then we'll adopt the ordinance, of course, in July. And then August 8th will be the effective date of that ordinance.
All this was is just to move it back to the planning commission.
Okay.
Zoning matter, it has to go to the
Right,
planning commission.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Can we have a roll call on the concurrence?
Vice Mayor Boland?
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Rawlings?
Aye.
And Mayor Lauter.
Aye. Okay. Do we, at this point, do we want to set that, a special meeting to,
You could at
Or
the
we can-
end,
we
at
can
the
send-
end of your meeting. You
okay,
can-
all right,
We
we'll
can
do
set
that.
it, we can also maybe even adjourn to a meeting if we need to do this.
Yeah, you can adjourn to a regular meeting to a date certain without,
Okay.
adjourn this meeting to another date, but you have to give a 10-day notice before you can act extension of the program.
But if it's not on this agenda, then how do we adjourn this to a date certain for that item?
You can always adjourn the
Because we're
the
still on
meeting
that
to
item. We
another-
haven't taken up a new item.
But the moratorium is not on this
I know,
agenda.
you wouldn't be taking any action on that. You would just be adjourning to a date certain for this regular meeting. It just adjourns. For instance, Chico doesn't do special meetings. Almost everything is adjourned to another meeting.
This council meeting adjourned to,
What would be
would
the
be
purpose of
continued.
that?
So that we can we can properly notice for the,
You do an addendum to the,
Or you can have a special meeting.
I'm just saying, I can sort of understand. I thought if there's something's not on the agenda, then we can't take an action on it. So since a moratorium or the extension of the moratorium, how can we adjourn this meeting to a date certain to talk about something that wasn't on this agenda?
But that's not considered action under the Brown Act. All you're doing is continuing your meeting. So you
Add something to that?
Yeah, and then you can add things to that adjourned meeting if you wish.
Or to keep it more simple, we can just call a special meeting and deal with the moratorium.
We don't normally do adjourned regular meetings.
okay, so why don't, to keep Councilman Culleton happy, we will just call a special meeting.
Right, and the earliest date you could hold one would be April 22nd.
Okay. So look for a special meeting on April 22nd, 2 days after Easter. Okay. Moving on. We need to take a recess? Okay, we good to go? All right. All right. I just want to make sure. Nobody need to catch their breath. Okay, moving on to item 7C. That is following discussion and public comment. Jumps right into the middle of the, it's kind of an odd way to start out. Item 7C,
Okay,
Madam-
and
Madam
before
Manager.
we go into this item any further, I would like to ask the council's permission, if I could, to just give a real brief overview of our budget, not the budget report that you received, the long one, but just a few items that we wanted to make sure that the general public and the public visiting tonight could know, because a lot of them weren't here when we talked about the budget, and it's really important to have a good understanding about why we're talking about this issue tonight on the ballot, or, excuse me, on the agenda. So if we can do that, then we'll just have
You
Gina
okay with
go
that?
ahead.
Do you have a consensus? Okay,
Thank you.
please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Gina.
Well, thank you and good evening. So as the town manager had mentioned, we'd like to just do a really quick budget update for the benefit of the audience, especially anybody that may not be up to speed with our current general fund budget. So speaking of revenues for our current 2013-14 revenue and the budget, 65% of our revenue sources are property tax driven and assessed value driven, followed by general sales and use tax, then franchise fees, occupancy taxes, and then user fees. So a very large portion of our revenue stream are property tax based. Over the last 7 years, and in particular since the start of the recession, you can see a pretty dramatic drop to our revenue stream. And in fact, this fiscal year, you'll notice that the revenues are projected to end just a little bit less than the last fiscal year. Property taxes and motor vehicle in lieu, as I mentioned, they are constrained by a 2% growth factor. So again, most of those revenues cannot grow any more than 2% in any one fiscal year. And then as a result of the recession, we've lost $3.3 million in revenues from declining property values. The town only receives 23% of the property taxes that are paid by the public. Sales and use tax, this is obviously another big area of our budget, but obviously not as big as property tax revenues. Currently, for this fiscal year, we're seeing that revenues have reached pre-recession levels, and from that perspective, while we do expect growth in the future, we don't expect it to be extremely robust. Franchise fees and transient occupancy taxes, we're seeing that franchise fees are trending a little above the prior year, but unfortunately transient occupancy taxes are trending about 5% below the prior year. Our service fees have dropped dramatically. We see a pretty strong correlation between decreased staffing and this drop of service revenues, both through vacancies and just a reduction in overall general staffing levels. And then moving on to expenditures. So the last several years, we've been making dramatic cuts to our expenditures in order to balance the budget. And you can see this trend line of expenditure reductions. General fund expenditure categories, again, the majority of our resources go to support public safety, both police and fire. So that's 70% of our general fund budget is for those activities. The rest is for administration and some other minor community development and public works support. So since the recession, the Town of Paradise employees have stepped up with employee concessions. This is the 5th year of employee concessions for the town. They have, those savings have generated over $907,000, specifically for the general fund, $671,000. And we've reduced our workforce dramatically from the start of the recession, almost 45%. Those numbers do include our CAL FIRE transition. So in addition to the salary and benefit and other staff cuts, we've had cuts related to deferred maintenance issues. So we have not been able to replace equipment or repair equipment as we should, or maintain our buildings appropriately. In addition, we have cut training budgets drastically in all areas, including public safety. We've not been able to contribute to our GASB 45 trust, which in the future will fund our unfunded liability related to retiree medical. And we've not been able to, the general fund has not been able to contribute to animal control, streets or roads, or engineering. And we've not also been able to make any kind of investment towards our downtown sewer study. So general fund summary, good news is that we have balanced the budget. We expect to balance the budget both this fiscal year, and we just came in at a balanced budget last fiscal year. The prior 2 years, unfortunately, we were deficit spending. We were able to rebuild our reserve to achieve our 15% goal. So by the end of this fiscal year, we expect that we will be back at our 15% goal for the reserve. Related to a 5-year projection, what we're seeing is based on rolling forward this bare bone budget where we've eliminated some really essential expenditures from our budget, we do still expect that we could be deficit spending the next 5 years, not by a lot, but in the range of about $100,000. As what we're seeing is that revenues are just not keeping pace with our expenditure growth. So then if we add in the elements that we haven't been able to fund the last few years, again, deferred maintenance, contribution towards our GASB 45 trust, et cetera, our deficit grows more in the range of $550,000 a year.
And I think that is where I want to focus on that critical area that's not being budgeted. And I just believe that it's really important for the town council to know and the citizens to know that, yes, we did balance our budget, and that's great. We've been holding back expenses. We've been cutting as much as we possibly can. But when you balance a budget with a structural deficit, then I would believe that the citizens would want to know, because a few years down the road, if we need a fire engine, police, cars, or whatever we need, we're not going to have the money to do that. Right now, it's just a stopgap measure. We have a bare bones budget. And I want to say, too, it's not because we've been growing or we want to grow. We have been cutting back. Our workforce has cut almost 44% in the last several years. So we're cutting our government. We're not trying to grow a big government, but we do need to provide a certain level of services. We can't cut back on certain emergency services for the people. So it's for up to the people to decide. Right? I want to be the manager that says we balance the budget and we have a lot of money and everything's great and we have cards so that people can speak to the council and we're just the greatest. But that's not the case. We also have to bring forward the things that are not so, easy to hear and not so great to hear. And that is, right now, what I'm saying is our budget is not, even though it's balanced, we've cut some real important things out of the budget. We have been living within our means, right? But living within our means have declined considerably, as you have seen in the charts and in the PowerPoints. The global economy had something to do with that. It affected everyone. It trickled down to everyone. Private business, as well as all public entities, have suffered. We're going to grow back much more slowly because our property values cannot grow. We only get 23 cents on the dollar of our property taxes. So when people say, I pay my property taxes, so I want all these levels of services, we have to look at the level of services and we have to look at our property values, which are pretty low right now. Our streets and roads, we have 100 miles of public roads, and that doesn't include the private roads that we do not plow, that we do not maintain. But those public roads, we also have 100 miles of open public ditches that we have to clear every year, and culverts that other cities don't have because their storm water drainage is underneath the surface, and it doesn't require so much maintenance. We also do not have a sewer system, and we would like to invest in that. But mainly in our streets and roads and public safety is what I want to focus on. We looked at many different ways. The council asked us to please bring us forward something. If we have a revenue issue, what can we do to make that better? The good thing is that anything that we do as far as a city is we have to go to the voters and ask. So what I am going to bring forward tonight is ask the town council to place an item on the November ballot where the citizens can vote and weigh in on this issue. Do we want to pass an increased revenue option that will allow us to address some of these issues? We looked at several different ways to raise revenues. Cities don't have very many options. One of the best options that we looked at is a sales tax measure, and I know that other cities are looking at these too. One of the things that I don't like to do is bail out big government or the state government, which has taken a lot from us. We've all felt this, especially cities. And if you look at the conditions of the streets and roads in many cities, that's where you see that. We do apply for grants, and we will continue to apply for as many grants as we can. But when you apply for grants, you need money for the local match, and you need money for other things. You know, people talk about adding signals or fixing the roads in many ways that we just can't do because it's not within a grant parameter. Anyway, back to the sales tax initiative that we're requesting is we want the council to consider a half-cent sales tax for a limited period of time. And we want to ask the council that they establish a citizens oversight committee so we can make sure that we focus that money on public safety and on streets and perhaps the sewer and some of these other structural deficit items that we need to put back in our budget so that we can have a real balanced budget. It's a hard thing to do, to ask the council to do that, especially when we have a couple of council members up for election this year. But you cannot put a tax increase initiative on a ballot without having council members up for re-election. So it's kind of a safeguard for citizens. So we're asking the citizens in November, if the council passes this tonight, to weigh in on our options to make this community better and focus our increased revenues on public safety and streets and roads. And I know it's a trust issue, but if you look at our budget, if you look at what we've been doing, and I know that some members of this audience here have been to almost every single council meeting. We have done a complete report. We have given a complete report to council. And all of those reports are on our website. They're available for inspection. And we believe that the trust is there. We also believe that we provide a very good service to the community. I'm not here to beg for money. I'm here to say to the citizens, where do you want us to focus our energy? Where do you want to focus our service? And what do you want that level of service to look like? Thank you.
Okay. Before I open it to the public, do we have any questions from the council?
One question, you have your, I must have missed it, you have your financial impact, and I don't see the cost of putting it on the ballot.
The cost to put this on the ballot is between $5,000 and $8,000. The city of Red Bluff just estimated $5,000 for theirs to put this on the budget, and those are the best projections that we can get from the county. Our election cost for the rest of the election will be $25,000, well, minus the 5, so between $18,000 and $20,000. But this particular thing will be about $5,000. It will net the community $850,000 a year, and we can not only address our structural deficit, but we can put a lot more money towards the roads, towards getting new grants, and towards our public safety.
Recommending 10 years for this half-cent sales tax, and could you explain how you came up with 10 years?
Sure. Well, the reason why we put 10 years, we wanted to keep it a limited term. We wanted to keep it a term that we believe that will get us the most bang for a buck in the future. And if we put a certain amount of money towards the GASB 45, the unfunded liability, which is the new law which California voters passed, they want that unfunded liability listed on our balance sheets. So we put that out there. If we could fund some of that in 10 years down the road, that will be that will be a good source of revenue for that option and be more towards coming sustainable, which it needs to be. It'll also be the best bang for our buck on getting projects for street projects and getting more black on the roads, like we did with the Billy Road, the overlay, like we did the overlay on South Libby. We can do other roads, and we have so many roads that need attention in our town, so we could put more money on our roads. And of course, hiring public safety.
How does 10 years apply to the structural deficit, though? At the end of 10 years, are we still forecasting a structural deficit if the tax goes away?
Well, no, the structural deficit, at some point, the property values are going to be coming up. And at some point, some of the issues, now, if you listen to what we have done in the past several years, the council, the past management has made several cuts. We've cut our personnel costs. We've made so many cuts that, and we've made some cuts and put a cap on our medical costs, so we capped that. So at some point in the future, and I can't say exactly how far that's going to be, but we're hoping that the revenues will come up, the property values will come up, and the expenses, as far as some of these long-term expenses, will go down. We'll always have the expense for streets and roads. We'll always have to put money on our roads. We'll always have to, provide public safety for the community. So a 10-year term gave us enough of a breathing point, if you will, to see that we would become more sustainable at that point. And that's a number that can be, that's not a hard and fast number, I should say, the 10 years.
And that's what I'm getting at. I'm trying to figure out if we were going to do this, and you're going to have a time limit on it, the time limit should be based on when you anticipate that structural deficit, the revenues coming up to take care of that structural deficit.
Well, I think our finance director wanted 20, but we had to make it something that people that could handle and we could have a limited term. And Steve, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I don't see this two things. I don't see this as being a cure for the structural deficit. The cure for the structural deficit is going to be stopping the state raids, but it's mainly going to be the recovery of the economy. There's a lot of different things factored into that. We can't go any lower. I mean, in public safety areas, which is almost 70% of the. My concern is that we're not passing this tax. We're just going to put something out there and tell the people, here's the books, here's reality, here's how many policemen I got on the streets, how many firemen, and so if you all agree to this, then and oversight over this, at least have you a watchdog over this, but my thing is like, I don't agree with the finance manager, because I want to go to the public and say, look, I need this for 6 years or whatever. Costs more money for a special election. And if we aren't, the economy, if things aren't getting better, if we haven't got a Walmart or whatever, some of the things that plans for many years, then we have to go back to the public and say, okay, been able to accomplish with that, and things haven't recovered fully yet. The deficit isn't been structural deficit, and so what do you think? You want to continue another 3 years, rather than going for this padding and all of that? I mean, I'm a voter and a taxpayer. I want to pay another half a cent, $4 gallon of milk.
Can I correct you for a moment?
Thank you for clarifying that, Councilman
Food
Coulter.
is not taxable.
Well,
There's no
but-
sales tax.
but I-
Gallon,
and anything.
$4 gallon of gas, yes, it's taxable. But your milk, your ice cream, and your bread are not, at least not at this point in the state of California. So, just,
Oh, okay, well, but you know, it's just.
I know what
it's
you're
the idea-
saying.
I mean, it's like putting myself in the shoes of the taxpayer.
give it time, yes. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
A limited time is a good thing to do. We want to limit, we do want to limit this request, and thank you for clarifying that, Steve. You did a good job with that. 6 years, 10 years, obviously we'll take whatever we can get. We need something now. I don't want to be the town manager that didn't bring this message forward. It's real critical for people to know, because next year, the year after that, things are going to get very critical. You know, the council knows how hard we have been struggling as far as the staff goes, and we've cut so much. And you know that we've been doing everything we can to keep up the level of service. I can't do that forever. I'm going to always do my best as long as I'm here, in whatever capacity. I will always do my best for the citizens of this town.
One of the things that a former colleague, of Mr. Titus, when he was here on the council, one of the conservative values that I learned from him was, we talked about this a couple of years ago when we were looking at a $400,000 deficit and trying to get to a balanced budget. And his point was, until we've done everything we can within the town's government to reduce, all of the expenses and everything, he would not be in agreement with putting it to the people, any kind of a tax measure. But we've done that. I think compared to other cities and towns, we have done everything. This staff, everything we've done. One of the things on the highway project for downtown is, one of the concerns is the road rage, and the people are going to be, we can't slow down traffic right out in front of this building because I don't have a policeman that's dedicated to traffic. So there's real valid things that we're going to be able to go to the public and say, look, if you guys agree to a half-cent sales tax for a short period of time with some oversight thing on it, these are some of the things we hope to accomplish. It's not a special tax, we can't guarantee it, but we can tell you these are our priorities, number one, because if we have 2 lanes through downtown, there's going to be people racing all up and down there and cutting people off, and I'm going to have the police chief assign overtime and tax the few people I have that are already we can make a good case for doing this because we've made the cuts. We are so lean, and so we need a little relief so that we can get back to normal and have some hope in America, and that the economy is going to recover. Property values are going to go up. We'll get some more. We're getting a big five. We're getting some businesses come to town. There's a lot of things that we can present to the public and say, okay, we're all on the same team. This is our town. This is our community. What do you all want? So that's kind of where I'm.
A big part of our current deficit is deferred maintenance, deferred equipment. We've got old police cars, we've got 20-year-old fire trucks, 12-year-old fire trucks, 13-year-old fire trucks, and we've got leaking roofs and fire stations. It's been put off for years and years and years, and the more you put it off, the worse it's going to get. So this would be an opportunity to put some to.
I'm going to open it up to the public. So why don't I open it up to the public at this point? Do we have any cards, Madam Clerk?
I have 4 cards.
4 cards.
The first card is from Fred Aldred.
Starting your timer. Starting your timer, Fred.
It's funny that you've been saying that all night, and I feel that I own this building.
You do.
And now you're asking
couple
me
of splinters
to
in
pay
it.
more money for the privilege to speak to you for only 3 minutes. So I find it interesting that you say that to everybody that comes up here that thinks can outtalk you or Woody. Not a chance. Council, good evening. You know who I am. You know what I think about taxes. You know I'm going to argue with you. I'm going to spare you that. I'm here to see how you are going to sell this. I know what you're going to do tonight, but I want to know how you're going to sell it. so that we can counter it. Now, I wasn't prepared because I hadn't heard the sales pitch yet. Gina, thank you very much. Very clear. Lauren. But I'm hearing key words here. And expenditure growth. That's something that comes up. You say, well, we want to direct this towards police and roads, safety, public safety, roads, but there's going to be expenditure growth. So it's just, those are things that we're going to look at. We hope to have a healthy discussion with you guys, and things come up like the public trust. Well, I think we should have a healthy discussion of how the bed tax, the TOT, was sold to the public. It was sold that a portion of that TOT was going to go to the Chamber of Commerce, Performing Arts Center, and the Golden Nugget Museum. Just recently, council pulled 100% of that money back to the general fund. So if you're going to sell this to the people, I want to hear the whole sales pitch, and I want to be ready for it. And that's why I'm here tonight. So, you know, I've heard the phrase that we don't have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem. And if I call my Visa card company and tell them that, what are they going to tell me? So I'm thinking that council just needs to kind of stick to the same basic rules that we have to live by in our own households. So that's, I'm anxious to hear the rest of your sales pitch. Thank you.
Next card. Thank you, Fred.
Ward Haberl.
Thank you. Two things. I mentioned the thing earlier about the signatures. Well, this guy that I just met 2 hours ago, he says, hey, if you want a bunch of signatures, I'll get you 100 signatures against this tax thing. But I have a more serious matter, and that's what we're doing about property values. I just found out today, down in Orville, paying my taxes, that my rental house is going to have the property tax assessment reduced again because of the marijuana grow at the neighbor's house and his 30-plus plants for which the town has only sent a nasty letter, hasn't stopped a thing. Same property tax reduction to the guy that's on the north side of the guy with the 30-plant grow. His taxes are going to go down. That's not right. I would like for my taxes to go up because my property's worth more. It's worth less. My friend in real estate says, I wouldn't try and sell your house now. You just can't do it. I've lost my last 2 renters because they couldn't stand the stink. And the current one won't pay full share. That hurts. We also had an issue come before you about the pink obstruction right down here leaving Skyway. That is blight. We've got it all over town. You've heard before about the fast food abandoned chicken place at the corner of Wagstaff and Clark. That holds down property values. Kitty Corner from Stratton's Market. That property is a horrible mess and has been for years. If we would clean up our town, our property values would go back up. All the real estate people will tell you that. I wouldn't mind paying more taxes if my property value went up. You're not helping me. I wish you would. Thank you.
Next card.
Tobias Hook.
Good evening. My name is Tobias. I'm a resident of Paradise. And once again, thank you, staff, for putting that together. Gina, that was very good. I'll reiterate what Fred said. I want to tell you that I stand totally opposed to any new tax increase to the citizens of Paradise. I feel that in California, we already suffer some of the highest tax rates of anybody in the nation. And I find that when you want to come to us and burden us with yet another tax, that is extremely distasteful. I know that, and I respect the measures you guys have undertaken to reduce our burden. And I know it's a difficult choice to make, but I don't think you've explored every option. I know for a fact you've been presented with other options, and those have not been really explored or even talked about, other than raising a sales tax temporarily. So thank you for that. I also feel that I don't think it's fair that we continue to suffer some of the mismanagement and lack of foresight of past and present city government. I think mistakes were made in the past. We're paying for them now. but I see these same mistakes being made, and I'm just tired of having to deal with it, really. I think it's really unfair to come before us and propose this right now. Lastly, I just want to urge council to vote no about putting this on a ballot in November. I think it needs a lot more consideration, a lot more public debate. I welcome that you want to put together like a citizens advisory committee, or however you phrase that. I think that's a good first step, and I really think that we should focus on that and getting more people involved and actually entertaining some of the input that you have been given in a serious manner. Thank you.
My last card is from Linda Horton Lyons.
Good evening, Linda Horton Lyons. I was very happy to hear a more in-depth discussion of what this is all about, but here's some of my concerns. If you put this on the ballot, what is the language? And to go with Tobias, the Citizen Oversight Committee would be smart to be looking at it before you put on the ballot. Is it going to have an area that we can reverse it out, like a sunset clause? And what kind of steps does it take to reverse it out? And it's rarely ever reversed once you put a tax in. That historically, I'll stand by that forever. Yes, budget of our taxes have gone down, and we are all feeling the same thing. That if we could be on that citizen oversight committee in the beginning and not just pursue this, there's this cost of $5,000 to $8,000 plus the $20,000. I'm not.
That's for the regular election for the council members to
That's a
run.
normal
It's just- right.
cost that you would have to incur. Okay. So to get $150,000 revenue back.
$850,000 a year.
850,000? Okay.
5,000 for 850,000.
Okay. And also that 10-year is too long. Definitely too long. You need to review it much sooner than that if this went through. What was interesting, I got a phone call just as I came through the door, and it was my cousin from Burbank, and I said, I can't talk right now, I'm going into a town meeting. What about? I said they wanted to raise the sales tax for needed necessities. He says, well, they're trying to do that down here for potholes. Are we going to do it individually on every little thing? This is not how we can address everything. So it's kind of across the state. Let's see. I think that's pretty much the area that I wanted to talk about that. But go with you. We're part of the Mustang Ragtops, bringing down the queens and princesses down on the 26th. And my husband just put a display up at the Gold Nugget Museum for everyone to see. So, community-minded. Here we go.
Any other cards?
That's the last card.
Anybody else in the public that didn't get an opportunity to fill out a card and come forward? Well, Bob, if you can skip that portion. They're normally kept outside the door or up there at the clerk's desk, but you can give us your name and give us your
Bob Beeler, will there be an increased tax on popcorn? I'm Bob Beeler. I've lived here
on
for
sodas it will be.
14 years. I appreciate very much hearing what's going on with the town, and I don't think I've heard the situation described so well. I think it was a Paradise Post that lifted up essentially what you lifted up tonight. This is an opportunity for us to learn more about what's going on in the town and be a little bit more clear what we're voting on. I think it's a great idea to put it on an initiative. Thank you for doing it.
Eric.
Good evening. My name is Derek Onstein. I have a business here in town. We've been here for about 35 years, and when the economy decreased, it really hurt us badly. and we had to cut our income, and I just wanted to go ahead and thank all the townspeople that took a cut in their pay, because we did the same thing. We ended up having to cut our income by over 50%, and, you know, it really hurt. And I don't really foresee the economy coming back real quickly, although we're in the third year of recovery now, and I haven't really seen it yet. So I don't know if there's any other places that we can cut. I know you said you've cut it to the bone, and every one of our trucks is old, and we're trying to make a go of it. I don't have any way of forcing money out of people, though. I wish I could. You know, I kind of thought maybe some of the guys that are doing well in town should bear a little more of the burden. If we put a 5% tax on movie theaters, and we could really...
I wish I was doing well enough to do that.
I know, and that's just what you know, every time we add a little bit more burden, I know the streets are in trouble, but I also know that there's a lot of places that the town spends money on giving public servants retirements that are just phenomenal. And that's going to be a burden from here on out. I mean, and if we don't make a change there, I don't see where adding taxes is going to help anything, because you can add a tax now and it'll go away. I mean, it'll all be, and we can add another tax later. If a 0.5% is good, why don't we go for 5% and really solve the problem, or 10%? The people that can least afford it are going to be guys like Woody. I mean, once you retire and you don't have a way of increasing your income, where do you come up with the extra money? And the elderly people in Paradise that are on Social Security, they're not going to be able to come up with the extra money. And if we do raise another, 0.5%, it isn't that much, but most people go to Chico anyway. I mean, that's one more reason to go to Chico and spend money somewhere else. So, you know, any of the town council members, if you think or if you say you're conservative, hey, I just want to urge you to vote against this. Thank you very much.
Anybody else in the audience want to come forward? Harrington?
Ray Harrington, Posey Lane, Ray. I heard on the news today that the California state government has the largest surplus they've had in years. What action are they took draconian measures and stole from every city, town in this state. What is the California League of Cities and Towns doing to get that money back from the state? The governor has some plans for it, but it's not the governor that sets the plans, it's the legislatures. Nielsen and Logue are the people we should go after and make sure that they start returning that money that they stole from us. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so I will close the public comment portion on this item, and you ready to have something to say, Mr. Boland? You wanted to wait until the... I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to.
No, you already did. Thanks.
But there you go. Yeah.
I appreciate those of you that respectfully gave your dissent. I think we can have a civil discussion without being condescending in our attitude sometimes, but I have a problem. The problem with me is I put faces with this increase, and I know the people that are putting out a ton in this town, and I appreciate that. And for them, I would love to see there to be a reward, but I can't go for the increased tax. I just don't. For me, philosophically, it's wrong. I can't see us saying, shop Paradise, oh yeah, you can pay more taxes. It just doesn't come across right to me. I hope there's other ways that we can find to raise the revenues we need to make it work. And I think if we do it in a way that's steady and slow, and even if it is slow with the property taxes, work on getting businesses in this town to increase our sales tax. I think that steady growth is better than us trying to push an initiative that I believe will fail. I don't think it'll work. I don't think the people of this town will go for it. And unfortunately, the tough part is taxes are like a drug. Once you get on it, it is not that you can't, there are instances in which there has been sunsets that people have stopped them, but tough. It's very, very tough. You're used to that income, and to get off of that is very difficult. And for those reasons, I'm not going to be able to vote.
Great, and if I could just say one thing, this is not a reward for staff, and I appreciate what you said, because I do know that
I
you
didn't
know
mean
the
it that
town.
way. If that's
All
the way it came across, I'm sorry.
Okay.
What
Yeah,
I'm-
this is
what
for
I meant by that
basically for
is-
services, and I think it's a good thing to ask the citizen what level of service they want and they expect, so it's just asking them to
What
weigh in
we're
on
asking is
that.
our police to do a night shift with 2 policemen on staff.
Right.
It's
been
very
tough.
difficult to do what needs to be done for the police.
Right.
And there's other agencies, other parts that, you know, how do you get the roads where they need to be? I understand that. See, I understand that, and that's what hurts me. I want to
And
get there.
businesses will come in if we have nice roads and we have the sewer, we can get more investment in our community. So it's just something, where do we want our community to be?
You know, I appreciate what you're saying, Craig, but, you know, the thing is, and it's fine to have a position to be against it and have all those beliefs. To me, it's about, you know, just put it out there and we're not passing it, but let the people decide. If you're right, if it fails, it fails. And then we'll deal with 2 policemen at night and whatever else we have. I've been on the council 10 years, and you've been here for 2 years, and what you've seen and what I've seen, how much growth has happened? You know, never mind the recession. I mean, the shopping center project, which was on the ballot in 2004, that the people of Citizens of Paradise voted 2-1 to build that shopping center and annex that property into the town. It's 10 years later, and that is not going to happen in the next 18 months or in the next 24 months, probably. You know, I mean, it's still out there. You know, the downtown and sewer thing and all of that 25 years ago, when everybody got recalled for trying to put a sewer, when it would have cost $15 million or something, it's a $30 million project. So, you know, I mean, I understand, and that's what, for me, it's like, let the people decide, let them decide, it's their decision, not ours. And then if things, with a sunset clause, and a very short one, because if things don't start, if we don't start to find other revenue streams, then, you know, then they can say, you know what, I mean, we either can increase it, because at some point, when you call up, when your house got broke into, or your wife is being threatened, or your child, there's not going to be an officer to come there. Or it's going to be a 30-minute delay before I can get anybody there. And certain crimes are already, you know, we just can't respond to certain things right now because we don't have the people. So those are the facts that Fred was asking about. How are we going to pitch it? Here's the reality. I don't have enough money to put a traffic officer out there. I don't have enough money to do these things. And so if you want this level of service, you know, and to me, a sales tax isn't all of our property owners that live here, that own property here. It's anybody to shop here. I mean, you know, am I going to go to Winco because there's no sales tax on food? Because it's cheaper to buy food down there than it is at Save Mart. So I just want to me, it's about let the public decide and let the dialogue and the debate go on publicly, you know, and then the voters will say yes or no. Same way when we have an election like this year, there's probably going to be people running for 2 seats. The public decides it's going to win. So it's not that I'm in favor of a tax, but I'm in favor of letting the people of this community facts be completely transparent, tell them exactly what I have in mind, and then have them tell me, okay, yeah, I want that or I don't want that. I wouldn't want to sit up here and vote to deny them that thing. I mean, it's like, here's the numbers, that's why I would vote to put it on the $5,000 to let the citizens of this community. Fellow talking about public, talking about the state robbing us or somebody and the retirement that everybody, there is state law, we can't touch that. We can't. Just, we cannot take that stuff away. The only place that totally insolvent. And not even then, we have an obligation. But I don't know, to me, it's just like, let's put it out there, spend the $5 grand, put it out there and let the public decide. wide open public debate about it, you know, pros and cons, whether it's good with.
Thank you. Before I forget this, I'm in favor of putting this on the ballot. I am in favor of it. I would not be voting for a sales tax per se, but I am in favor of allowing the public to have their say. I don't think it's up to us to tell them they don't have the right to vote for or their future. It's up to them whether or not they want to pass this or not, and according to my colleague here, he don't think it's going to pass, and maybe it won't, but at least their voice has not been taken away from them. That's my point. Another gentleman got up here and said, well, what about all this blight, and what about the down here south of town, and what about up here, the egg roll place? Well, they don't go away by themselves, and they're expensive to deal with. And there would be legal fees attached to it. There'd be all kinds of things to get rid of these blighted piece of properties. We just went through that with some of the blighted property. Everything this town does for you costs money. But I'm just saying, I am not going to take the people's voice away from them. Now. So for that reason, I will vote to place it on the ballot.
My perspective is very similar to Woody and John's. Every time I talk to my neighbors, folks in town, since I was appointed to this seat, people ask me about things that they want. They want to know why we have no traffic enforcement. How come no one in Paradise gets a speeding ticket? They want to know, can I get the potholes on their street filled? We heard about the blight here tonight. We also heard about somebody who'd like us to do enforcement against marijuana grows. That's public safety. That's our enforcement arm. And we don't have the money to provide those services. And I think that the public should be able to decide how much of those services they want or they don't want. So I agree, we should not take their voice away. We should give them an opportunity to make that decision. So I will vote to put it on the ballot.
Okay, my turn. Right now in California, about 67% of all communities have what we call a sales tax override, or an additional percentage. Some of them, they're up in the double digits in some areas where it's over 10%. A lot of places it's 8.5%, 9%. If you're in a area, rapid transit area, it can be quite high. But the impact of the half cent on the things that you purchase in your home, if you spend $15,000 a year on taxable items, gas and such in town, that amounts to about $75 for your household. For a business like mine, where I buy thousands of dollars worth of taxable supplies that are delivered in Paradise, yeah, it's going to cost me money. I'm going to pay more. I'm probably not going to increase my prices on sodas because of a half-cent sales tax, just like when the 1%, when the governor put in his new sales tax, we absorb it. And a lot of businesses will probably do that. My situation is a little bit different. But the other thing with a sales tax that's important to remember, it's very fair. We have all these people from Magalia, from outside of the town, so they're not paying our town property taxes, but they're driving across our roads. And the one good thing with the sales tax is it is very fair, and it's based on your income. If you don't make much money and you don't spend much money, it doesn't cost you as much money. If you make a lot of money and you spend a lot of money, it costs you more. And that's one of the nice things with a sales tax, where a parcel tax or any of the other options that we've looked at are really not as equitable as a sales tax. We're, working on this downtown safety project and being involved in pedestrian safety. It says every person you talk to, why can't we have traffic enforcement? Why can't you go out and write some tickets? How come you can't have somebody walk across the crosswalk, and when people don't stop for them, write them tickets? Well, that takes 3 or 4 officers. We don't have that. We don't have the money. Even if we could put them on overtime, we don't have enough people because we're overworked, stretched to the max. You get things like AB 109, the governor's realignment program, where they're dumping inmates into our community. We have it's had a huge impact on us. It's a revolving door. They take people down there to the jail, they book them and release them. And they burglarize your house. They get caught with your computers and your jewelry and your stereos. And, well, they had drugs on them, so it's a drug problem. So we're dropping all the other charges, and they're just going to send them to drug court because there's no room in the jail, and that's a convenient excuse. So we need to be able to deal with this. Paradise has about half the number of registered sex offenders that Chico has. Chico has 4 times the number of sworn officers that we have. You can look at any number of things, whether it's crime rates, whether it's registered sex offenders, whether it's traffic accidents. Paradise is on the bottom end when it comes to things. And so it's up to the citizens to make that decision. Do you want to keep these things when there's a pothole? When that deer is out there or that skunk is rotting out in front of your house, sorry, we only do animal control once a week. We'll pick it up, and you missed it. It was yesterday. So that skunk's going to stink for another week there. Now, we try not to do that to people, but those are the kind of things that are going to happen down the road because the fire truck breaks, you've got to fix it. So we're going to spend the money there. The roof collapses because of the snow, because we haven't fixed it. The money's going to have to go there, and sorry, we're cutting something else, and we're just on really limited funds. So I think it's important for the public to have the right to decide what level of service that they want. Do you want police and fire service? Do you want animal control? Do you want the potholes fixed? Do you want the roads plowed when it snows? And we've been lucky this year. I think we've had 1, maybe 2 snow events, and that's about it. But when we have those really bad ones, that taxes our system. We have good mutual aid with PID and Parks and Rec and even the county and we have volunteer snow plow drivers like Councilman Colton and myself have been trained to operate a snow plow. And we'll go out there and do it for free to supplement our staff who they just run out of time. They can't work anymore. So I think it's important for the community to have the opportunity to decide. I know that Chico has problems with their budget. They would love to be able to do this, but they know that the public doesn't trust them because they've had a difficult time on the staff and the council level letting the public know where their finances are, and it's finally coming out. I think we've been transparent and upfront with the public about where our finances are. I think I'm fine with letting the public decide. They can look at our finances, they can talk to Gina, they can come to a time for us, and we've done it. We're doing everything we can. The other thing I wanted to point out in the report, it talks about where what the impact is, where those sales taxes come from, and if you looked at what a business collects in sales tax, it's not taxing necessarily the citizens of Paradise. In a lot of businesses in town, their customers, in my case, nearly a third of my customers come from Magalia or outside of the town. So they're going to pay sales tax within the town. So really the impact what we looked at is if you break out the amount of money that we're taking in and the number of citizens, and you divided it out, and wasn't the number like
$65 per household.
$65
So it'd be a
per
lot less
household
than
was
that.
the average. And my contention is, it's not going to be
Per year.
$65 per household because the sales taxes are being paid, probably a third of them, by people from out of town. Area residents, county area residents, Penn Road, wherever. So
That's a
it's
good point.
probably about $45 impact per household in terms of taxes. So it's pretty small, so.
And we can do a lot with that. So whether it's whatever, how many years, we can do a lot with that.
So I guess the discussion, there seems to be, the proposal calls for, is talking about 10 years. And I'm hearing from my colleague on this side that he doesn't like 10 years, and it sounds like you don't like 10 years, and you would prefer 0 years for this tax. And I understand that.
Attaboy,
But you still, I think, I'd like you still to participate in the discussion.
I think
And-
10 years is a little long,
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
My recommendation would be that we do it for 6 years. I mean, there's some practical reasons for doing that. Actually, I guess, in looking at this, researching this earlier today, if this goes on a November ballot, and if the citizens vote yes for this, state law says it takes 110 days before it can be enacted, and then it's on the beginning of the first quarter following the 110-day waiting period. So that means the first time that this would become effective would be April 1st, 2015. So the way these things work is, and I'd want to do it on an election, a normal election year, so there's no special election things. So coming up with whether it's 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, to where it would be on a regular election year, because you would have to, if everything, nothing changed, nothing got better, and the sunset, that means it would end in 6 years. But if nothing got better and you had to go back to the public and ask them to extend it for another period of time, you would bring that up so that it would be on the November election before it ended. So my recommendation was to make it, I think it was 5 or 6 years, whatever that would make, whatever would make it, on an election year, which was, I don't know how they count that. If it's on this ballot in 14, would you go 6 years from then? And it'd be,
Well, what it's got to be is it's essentially got to be an odd number of years.
But, yes, you need to have odd number of years if you're going,
counted from the 15.
because
when
it would,
becomes
it would
effective?
go into effect April 1st, 2015, said, and it would sunset if it were 6 years. One, so, you could do that.
But see, 21 would be an odd, there's no election in
could-
21 on the odd number of years.
But you need, on,
If you had to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be, it would come back up, the decision would be made by the voters in November of 2020.
But only if you went through this process again, right? In other words, it would expire April of
Yes,
20.
it automatically expires. That's what a
Automatically
sunset
expires.
is.
And if the council wanted, if a council wanted to do it, that would be the point where they'd have to bring
have
it.
to put it on the ballot again,
Just like we
And the voters would have to vote again. It wouldn't be an automatic thing, it would be a sunset.
running, it'd have to be a regular election for the council, and then it would require a majority vote.
Okay, well, my recommendation would be 6 years, and if
540.
540. Title only,
We used 540.
But that wasn't applicable because it's not an ordinance yet, so that,
Okay.
I was incorrect on that.
Okay.
Agenda 7C, agenda item 7.
The sales tax?
It's collected by the, it's collected by, when you pay, when you pay your sales tax, then it's remitted to the city on a quarterly basis.
The good thing about this, right,
Yeah, state can't take that money.
Right now, we get 1% of what they collect. With this, we will get the full half cent if it passes. And it will all go to the community.
Okay, we have a motion
All of
by
it.
Mr. Colton. Are we sufficiently clear, Madam Clerk?
Yes, you're waiving the reading, and you're amending the ordinance to be a 6-year, which...
Not amending it because there was no date specified in the actual.
We're going to fill in the blanks, and it's 6 years from the operative date of the ordinance, and that's 6 years from April 1st, 2015. So it would terminate on March 31st, 2021.
And that's in section 5, page 73. Okay.
Okay, so there's the motion. We have a second by Mr. Rollins. Roll call.
So that's motion Culleton and a second by Rollins, and the roll call vote on ordinance 540. Vice Mayor Boland?
No.
Councilmember Culleton?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Rawlings?
Yes.
And Mayor Lauder?
Yes. Okay.
Can I just say something? There was a statement made that the TOT tax was recently moved to general fund. That was not recently.
Yeah.
Majority of this council, so that, it was not even here when that happened. It was not recent. That was not a true statement.
And it was because of a very emergency situation,
Well,
right?
But never,
Whether it was or not, it just...
but it never
just-
went away. like,
It
to your
wasn't
point.
recent, right.
Yeah, and it,
But the thing that's tough, too, and we have to understand, we were hit with a fee last week to accept a fee onto our new homes and things. And those fees and those taxes is what really makes it tough for people to keep saying okay to these things. And fortunately, most of the people left before that fee was discussed last month, but
And that was, again, a county
I was kind of, I know,
request.
but it's
And
just
that
little
may
bits
or may
here and
not
there.
go
It's just
through.
always something, and that's the part that makes it tough. And that's, anyway.
Well, we'll let the voters decide, and that's really all we've
That's
done
all- yeah,
tonight
that's right.
and that's important to, we haven't imposed a tax. We're asking the citizens if they would like to impose the tax on themselves and those that shop in our community. So, okay, so we're going to move on to,
after. It would be an oversight committee, like, to answer Fred's question about like, what is the tactic to sell this thing? It's going to be like, here's our priority list. Okay, these are the things we do because it's a general, goes into the general fund. So the oversight committee would be somebody, like, once we say, here's what's important, traffic officer, whatever it is, because it's not a special tax. So it just goes in the general pot, but we're going to tell you, this is what we're going to prioritize to spend it on. The oversight committee would be formed, the citizens would keep an eye on that budget, and make sure that those revenues coming in got spent on those things, and not spent on, something else. That's what that's about.
okay. Moving on to, thank you. Moving on to item 8, council communication, council oral reports. Who would like to start tonight? John has a big pile of stuff for us.
I'm not going through all of it either.
Please, I want you to read the whole thing.
No, there's a
Yeah.
copy for you. There's a copy for you. And there's a copy for everybody down the line. One goes to the manager.
Okay.
Attorney can share her.
Pass one down to,
Got them all?
I think so.
I attended the League of California Cities back membership meeting in Orland on the 18th of March, and I also attended the the League of Cities in Ontario first 3 days of this month. So this stuff in your packet is for your information. You can look through it.
And can I clarify, you attended those at your own expense?
I did.
Okay.
They ain't, the city's not paying anything. It's coming out of my pocket, and I'm so broke
You're
I
not
can't pay
paying for
attention.
it, Ward, so don't worry about it.
Glad you brought that up. So basically, there's a couple of things I do want to talk about, and it's not going to take long. There's a HR bill 29 was submitted to by Gomez, And it's a resolution opposing outsourcing of public services and assets. Basically, what that does, it's going to put the handcuffs on the cities and the towns, and it's going to keep them from being able to enter into agreements with contractors and or other cities or towns to outsource, say, let's say, trash pickup or maybe. So we can't. It's a way. Yes, animal control. It's a way that we save money, but we're not going to be able to do that if this thing is signed by the governor. Unfortunately, it's already gotten through the House, and the governor. It's waiting for the governor's signature. The California League of Cities opposed it, and at this meeting I just attended in Ontario, I'm on the League's policy committee, and I voted against it. And I also called several of our representatives. I called Dan Logue, Ken Cooley, Brian Dahl, Beth Gaines, and Frank Bigelow, and congratulated them on their no vote, not supporting this bill. This bill is going to be detrimental to us doing our job. We just have to call your representatives and tell them, please, talk to the governor, do not ask that he do not sign that bill because it's going to hurt us. So that's that one. And then
Did they, John, can I ask a question on that? Did they talk about who's behind it? What's the real reason? I mean, it's always, you follow the money usually.
Well, only thing I can tell you is Gomez.
Owned by?
I don't know who owns what, but all I know is he's the one that presented the bill.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what, often it's a labor union, something that, it's a union thing in this case, right?
Exactly. There you go. That was mentioned.
They're trying to keep you from laying off city union employees.
Another one for you. This one here was also, the union was actually mentioned in this one. Labor unions. AB 2126, Bonta submitted that one. League of Cities opposes that one as well. And it's too much for me to read, but basically what that goes to is when, in a packet, when the employee negotiations and CalPERS and things of that are being negotiated with employees, then sometimes it will go to a fact-finding committee, and that fact-finding committee is going to cost the cities and towns, especially us, the ones that can least afford it, large sums of money. So that one there, I want you to read up on, Ms. Manager, and because this one's going to be important to us too. It's going to cost us arm and a leg, so to speak. So I'm not going a lot of detail because you have it in front of you to read. So that's some of the things that's happening, and the biggest cities also in Orland, back on the 18th of March, this was brought up, and it was also brought up again down in Ontario. Given the fact that we're in a water crisis, the League of Cities is loosely, is what the word that was used, kind of loosely, we're in support of an initiative that we all understand that the state has to do something. And right now we support the fact that the state has to do something, and we are kind of taking a look-and-see attitude to see which way it's going. But what we're advocating is that the entities involved, all the water people who own interest in the water producers, and the legislators, and Northern California and Southern California, and everybody that's involved, talk in good faith, and we will, in bigger cities, will more clearly define their support once there is some definitive direction here. But right now, they're all kind of just jockeying. But what the League of Cities would like to see is water conservation. And that's being done. I've been seeing some articles in the newspaper about that. That big reservoir being worked on now. I understand it's been in the works for 13 years, but now they're going to breathe new life into it, and it actually may become a reality before they throw the dirt on me. But that would be cool. So that's what we need. We're looking at water conservation, groundwater recharge, stormwater capture and reuse, Clean Water Act's compliance, and watershed water restoration. Water Bond Task Force recommends the policy committees that critical water bond projects concentrate on storage and associated conveyance and water recycling. So this is at the top of everybody's mind right now, is the water shortage, and we are still way below what we normally get. I've got 36 inches on my deck, but that's not enough to get us through the year. So anyway, that's my report, and thank you very much for listening. Fell in my yard last week.
All right, next. Colton, do you have anything to report on?
Yeah, no, of course. I did not attend that meeting. I'm on the same committee with, because I could not afford the $265 to fly to Ontario this time. I did attend the BCAG and the Butte Air Quality Management meetings. Nothing, no big action items going on there. They're getting ready to prepare the budgets, and we're going to be looking at those coming up. Closed session where the bargaining unit for Air Quality Management District cost of living raises in a number of years, bunch, and we gave them a little bit. That's what I know. There's a study of the bus ridership thing, their whole thing going on. And BCAG, the big news there is that they have funding in place to build the new transit center down in, not the transit center, the new bus barn and offices for the B line. Starting up pretty soon. And back to Washington, D.C. to meet with their lobbyists, both the Butte County representatives and the BCAG representatives, to try to find some more transportation money. So we're looking for that and keeping our ears open to see what we can get up here. And I think that's about all I know that at least that's all I can remember.
Mrs. Jones.
I don't have anything to report this month.
ID meeting, but nothing really informational meeting.
Did you have an update on the outside display?
We met, and that's right. Thank you.
Because I missed that when I was on a long conference call that didn't let me leave.
You know what's cool about the outdoor display thing is working just like government should work. We're getting people involved from the town that have businesses and involved with that, and it's been a really good situation, and we've been able to come up with some good solutions. We're not there yet, but we're a lot closer, and what's neat is they feel like they're part of the process, which they should be. So had a great meeting. We got a meeting another time, at least one more time, but we got some tasks to resolve, and they know what they are, and they're going to get together, and we're going to all get together after that and hopefully have something to bring to the planning commission at that point. So neat process. I like it.
Well, I have a number of things. One, our police chief had her babies, twins, a boy and a girl, and still, some of you may know that happened when she was gone with Lieutenant Rowe and Valerie. They were in Reading to attend a DUI open birds, and I was surprised that our officer Feaster was beat out. Was the number I read correct, Steve, that there was an officer that 175 DUI arrests I think somebody's padding the numbers because Officer Feaster always wins. He had 78 because I rode with him when he got number 78 on December 30th. 77? Oh, okay. Maybe we lost track. Or maybe they kicked somebody loose. I don't know. Call him, and he's the expert.
The guy that won, you mean?
Yeah, okay. Well, still pretty impressive numbers in the city of Reading, 175 DUI arrests. That's pretty incredible. Like I say, we had, our Officer Feaster must have come in second, I would think, because, yeah, so we had 77 in our department. Anyway, Chief was down there, and she went into labor and had her babies there at Reading, and they're still up there and hopefully be released soon, so we're delighted, and they're very cute kids. I was, Councilman Culleton and I attended and welcomed the clerks, the municipal clerks, California, it was a California Association of City Clerks.
The Northern California City Clerks.
Okay. They had their meeting in Paradise, so it was nice, and we got a little TOT tax because they stayed overnight in town, so that was appreciated. And we've had several Paradise Community Village meetings. I have another one tomorrow morning. We continue to work on figuring out what to do with Paradise Community Village and Vertigo, and appreciate Vice Mayor Boland joining us the other day for some brainstorming and investigation. We've started our employee negotiations, and we had the first 2 meetings so far, so that was good. Had LAFCO the other day, and we've been able to hold LAFCO's city fees. LAFCO is the Local Agency Formation Commission. We oversee all annexations and delivery of services in the county, and it's paid for by cities, counties, and special districts. But we don't really get, as a city, we don't get any choice in what the budget's going to be. So they just say, well, we're increasing our budget 15%, and you got to pay for it. I voted no on that, but because I don't agree that they should go up. I thought it should stay the same. But I'm a city representative. I represent all 5 cities, county, along with a colleague from Gridley. We represent cities in there. And then a member from PID and from Area Recreation District, and then a public member. So, sure, yeah. And so I think that's the extent of my report. And Don wanted.
I had one thing I left out. I attended the fundraising for the Boys and Girls Club at the Elks Club a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It seems like, anyway.
Cook-off thing?
Well, it was a, I felt like one of them guys on TV,
Yeah.
You got the sample food. Me and Woody, we attended that together, and we had a good time. I understand it was quite successful. I've never seen so many people in the Elks Club. There were 15 stations, and we each had a young lady that would bring us a sample of the food that was being made to each one of the stations, and we got to judge the stations on decorations and how well they looked and how neat they were and all this. And then the food, we judged the food, and the form, I understand, was made by Woody. Didn't you design the form, the voting form? Oh, that was
Cook-off.
Oh, that would. Well, anyway, in the cook-off it was. But anyway, it was a good form, and we had a good time.
Can you tell me about something important happening on Saturday, April 19th, down on American Way?
Oh, American Way. April the 19th. I should have thought about that. I was over there today.
I only said it because it's on my calendar, and
April the
I have to miss it.
April the 19th, I would love to, you all come to the Animal Protection Center on American Way between the hours of 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. and tell your families and friends to be there. We are going to have a new and a re-grand opening of the Animal Protection Center on that day, and there's been a lot of revamping done. The place is beautiful. I went over there today and took a look around and and enjoy it. It's be a good time for all, really, and it's quite informative too, because you'll learn a lot about what they do there. It's more than just taking in dogs and sheltering dogs and cats and all other kind of animals. It's about protecting the public against diseases that are carried by animals, and it's also informative to let you know how you can go about having your animal protected against carrying those diseases. And a lot of the veterinarians, well, we spoke to all the veterinarians in Paradise, and they're all very much behind revamping and the renewing of the effort to make this a full-service animal protection agency. And manager and myself and so many other people, Colette, she's gone, but Colette has been, wow, she's been quite the coordinator. So anyway, I just want to invite you all to be there and come see us on the 19th of April at the Animal
And
Protection Center.
I understand the cleanup over at the animal shelter was done by the local Paradise Rotary Club, led by Town Manager Gilligan, who has Team Gilligan that went over there and worked 2 different Saturdays to clean up the grounds and do all of that stuff.
Yep. And even, well, Lauren even showed me, we were putting these slats in the fence, you know, to make the chain link fence look better. Well, you know, mine weren't looking that good. Well, not only mine, but quite a few other ones weren't looking that good. So she comes over and she says, you know, you have to have that lady's touch. She comes over and she says, this is how you do it. Man, they just went in so much easier, and they look so much neater. They're all even at the top. So there it is. The manager's managing again.
Okay, and then one thing I left out too is we did a swearing in of a new part-time animal control officer.
Oh, so we have 1.5 now, so
Yeah,
animal
1.5,
control is
so
good.
we're moving up.
And I left out one thing also. On Friday, the 11th of April, at the Paradise Depot Museum at the Town of Paradise Park, is going to be an open house for relaunching. We have a new docent there that's taken on the whole museum. They've redone the whole display. There's a whole thing on the logging and the trains, and so there'll be a brand new relaunching of that. I think it's maybe 4 or 5 or 6 or something. So go by the Depot if you haven't been there, and all you people out there in television land, go by the Depot on the 11th.
Greg, now, since everybody else got a second bite at the apple, you're still good? And you're sticking to your story? You got nothing to say? Okay, we're going to take Madam Manager, do you have any report for
No
tonight?
reports.
Okay, so our next item is our closed session, so we're going to take about a 5-minute break. And
Closed sessions be held
pursuant to 5495. Labor negotiations, one item of potential litigation.
You don't have to name them all, you just have to identify that closed sessions are going to relate to items
that
10A,
stuff.
10B, and 10C.
Okay.